The morning sun rose over what was once called New York City, but there was no city left to see. The towers that had once touched the clouds were now twisted metal bones reaching toward an empty sky. The streets where millions had walked were now rivers of dust and ash. The sound of car horns and laughter and life had been replaced by a silence so deep it felt like the earth itself was holding its breath. Drake walked through the ruins alone. His boots crunched on broken glass and scattered debris. He wore a military uniform that had seen better days, torn at the sleeve and stained with things he did not want to think about. His face was hard, like stone that had been carved by pain. His eyes, once bright and full of hope, now held nothing but cold fire. He stopped at a place he knew well, or at least he had known it well 3 years ago. It had been a small house with a red door and flowers in the window boxes. His wife Sandra had planted those flowers every spring. Roses, because she loved the way they smelled. Their daughters had helped her water them every morning before school. Now there was nothing, just a flat patch of scorched earth where his entire world had once existed. Knelt down and picked up a small object from the ground. It was a plastic hair clip shaped like a butterfly. It had been pink once, but now it was gray with ash. He remembered buying it for his daughter on her 5th birthday. She had worn it every single day until the day that came. He closed his fist around the clip and stood up. He did not cry. He had no tears left. They had all burned away in the fires that took his family, along with 8 billion other human beings. 3 years, that was how long ago the aliens had come. 3 years since the day the sky had opened up and ships the size of mountains had descended upon Earth. 3 years since humanity had looked up with wonder and hope, believing that they were about to join a great galactic community of peaceful civilizations. They had been so stupid, so naive, so trusting. The had seemed friendly at first. They were tall and beautiful, with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. Their eyes were like polished black stones, deep and mysterious. They spoke in musical voices and offered gifts of technology and knowledge. They talked about trade and cooperation and a bright future among the stars. World leaders had welcomed them with open arms. Scientists had celebrated the greatest discovery in human history. Children had drawn pictures of the beautiful silver aliens and dreamed of visiting other planets. And then, without warning, everything had changed. Remembered the day perfectly. He had been at work when the first explosions hit. He had tried to call Sandra, but the phones were dead. He had run outside and seen the sky on fire. Ships were everywhere, raining death upon the city. Their soldiers marched through the streets, killing everyone they found. Men, women, children, it did not matter. They killed them all with weapons that turned flesh to ash and bone to dust. By the time reached his home, there was nothing left, just a smoking crater where his life had been. They called it a pacification exercise. They explained in their calm and reasonable voices that humanity needed to understand its place in the galaxy. They were a primitive species, barely evolved, useful only as workers and servants. The killing was necessary to break the human spirit, to teach them obedience. They killed 2 billion people in the first week. Then they kept going. City after city fell. Country after country was reduced to ashes. The great monuments of human civilization, the pyramids and towers and temples that had stood for thousands of years, were destroyed in moments. The hunted humans like animals, tracking them into forests and mountains and underground bunkers. They made a game of it, competing with each other to see who could kill the most. By the time they were finished, 8 billion human beings were dead. Out of a population of 10 billion, only 2 billion survived. And those survivors lived only because they needed workers to serve them. But they had made a mistake, a terrible, fatal mistake. They had assumed that the survivors would be broken, that the killing would crush the human spirit forever, that the remaining humans would accept their place as slaves and never dare to resist. They had been wronged. Put the butterfly clip in his pocket and walked toward the edge of the ruins. A military transport was waiting for him, its engines humming softly. A young soldier stood beside it, snapping to attention as approached. "Admiral Drake," the soldier said, "the fleet is ready. They're waiting for your orders." Admiral, it was strange how quickly things had changed. 3 years ago had been a history teacher at a high school. He had never held a weapon in his life. He had believed in peace and diplomacy and the basic goodness of intelligent beings. Now he commanded the most powerful military force in human history, and he had only one purpose left in life: revenge. He climbed into the transport and strapped himself in. The vehicle rose into the air and accelerated toward the coast, where the human fleet was gathered in secret. As he flew over the ruined landscape, thought about the early days after the slaughter. The survivors had been scattered, hiding in caves and bunkers and anywhere else that could not find them. They had been terrified, starving, hopeless. Many had simply given up, walking out into the open to let the aliens kill them rather than continue living in such a nightmare. But others had refused to surrender. Small groups of humans had begun to fight back, using whatever weapons they could find. They attacked patrols, stole their equipment, learned their weaknesses. At first, the resistance was little more than a nuisance to the aliens, but it grew. Had joined the resistance 6 months after losing his family. He had spent those months in a dark place, barely eating, barely sleeping, just existing in a fog of grief and rage. But then he had met a woman named Lisa Grant, a former Army captain who had lost her entire unit in the first wave of attacks. Lisa had looked at him with hard eyes and said words that changed his life forever. "You can lie down and die," she had told him, "or you can stand up and make them pay. Those are your only choices." Had chosen to stand. He had discovered that he had a talent for strategy, for seeing patterns and possibilities that others missed. He rose quickly through the ranks of the resistance, planning operations that caused more damage to them than anything they had faced before. He became known as a man who never gave up, who never showed mercy, who would do whatever it took to hurt the aliens who had destroyed everything he loved. And then came the breakthrough. A team of human scientists, working in a hidden laboratory deep beneath the Swiss Alps, had managed to capture a ship intact. They had studied it for months, taking it apart piece by piece, learning its secrets, and they had discovered something incredible. They were not as invincible as they seemed. Their ships and weapons were powerful, yes. Their shields could stop any weapon humanity had ever created. But the shields had a flaw, a tiny gap that appeared for a fraction of a second each time they cycled. If a weapon could be designed to exploit that gap, to strike at exactly the right moment with exactly the right force, the shields would be useless. The scientists had worked day and night to create such a weapon. They called it the needle because it was designed to slip through the smallest possible opening. It was a missile no larger than a pencil, accelerated to near the speed of light, timed to hit the shield gap with perfect precision. The first test had destroyed a patrol ship in orbit. The aliens had not even known what hit them. After that, everything had changed. The resistance was no longer just a nuisance. It was a real threat. Humans began building ships of their own, using stolen technology combined with human engineering. They built weapons and armor and everything else they needed for war. And they built it fast, faster than should have been possible, because they worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, fueled by nothing but rage and grief and the burning need for vengeance. They did not rest. They did not complain. They did not stop. Every survivor knew what was at stake. Every survivor had lost someone. Every survivor wanted the same thing: justice. The transport descended toward the hidden base, a massive underground facility carved into the rock beneath the ocean floor. It had taken 2 years to build, using technology stolen from themselves. The aliens had no idea it existed. They still thought humans were primitive cave dwellers, incapable of any real resistance. They were about to learn otherwise. Stepped out of the transport and walked through the base. It was a hive of activity, thousands of people working on ships and weapons and equipment. The air smelled of metal and electricity and determination. Everywhere he looked, he saw faces marked by loss and hardened by purpose. These were the survivors, the ones who had refused to die, the ones who had channeled their grief into something powerful and terrible. Commander Daniel met him at the door to the command center. Daniel was a big man with a shaved head and a cybernetic arm that whirred softly when he moved. He had lost the original arm fighting off an assault team with nothing but a hunting rifle and his bare hands. He had killed 6 of them before they finally brought him down, and even then he had survived long enough for a rescue team to find him. "Admiral," Daniel said with a nod, "everything is ready. 200 ships fully armed and crewed that have no idea what's coming." Nodded and walked into the command center. It was a large circular room filled with screens and control stations. Officers and technicians sat at their posts, monitoring every aspect of the fleet's readiness. On the main screen, a holographic display showed the position of every human ship, forming a perfect formation around the Earth. Lieutenant Amy Cole looked up from her communications station. She was young, barely 25, but she had the eyes of someone much older. She had survived the destruction of London by hiding in a sewer for 3 weeks, drinking rainwater and eating rats while soldiers hunted for survivors above her head. "Sir," Amy said, "we're receiving reports from our scouts. The diplomatic fleet has entered the solar system, 50 ships including High Commander's flagship." Allowed himself a small, cold smile. The architect of the slaughter, the alien who had personally ordered the destruction of human civilization, the one who had called the killing a necessary lesson in obedience. He had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. "Time until they reach Earth orbit?" asked. 4 hours, sir." Turned to face the command center staff. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. He saw hope in their eyes and fear in something else, something fierce and hungry. "Today is the day," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Today we show that humanity is not dead. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you try to exterminate our species. Today we begin the war that will end with the total destruction of everyone who had a hand in killing our families." He paused, letting the words sink in. "This is not about survival anymore. We have already survived. This is about justice. This is about making sure that what happened to Earth never happens to anyone else. This is about teaching the universe that humans are not prey. We are not slaves. We are not victims." His voice hardened, becoming something cold and terrible. "We are the reckoning." The command center erupted in cheers. Let them have their moment, then raised his hand for silence. "To your stations, prepare for battle, and remember why we fight." The next 4 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Ships were moved into position. Weapons were armed. Crews ran final checks on every system. In the medical bays, doctors prepared for casualties. In the mess halls, soldiers ate what might be their last meal. Spent the time alone in his quarters, staring at the butterfly clip in his hand. He thought about the way she had laughed when she wore it to school. He thought about Baby, about how she had just learned to say Daddy before they took her from him. He thought about Sandra, about the last words she had ever spoken to him. "Come home safe," she had said that morning. "We'll have dinner together tonight." He had never come home. There had been no home left to come back to. A knock at his door pulled him from his memories. It was Lisa Grant, the woman who had pulled him out of his grief all those years ago. She was a general now, in charge of ground forces, but today she had come to the command ship to witness the battle firsthand. "It's time," she said. Nodded and followed her to the bridge. The bridge of the battleship Defiance was the heart of the human fleet. It was a massive space filled with officers and crew, all focused on that dominated the forward wall. On that screen could see the stars, cold and distant and uncaring. And approaching those stars, growing larger with every passing moment, was the fleet. 50 ships, each one bristling with weapons that could reduce a planet to rubble. At their center was the flagship of High Commander, a massive vessel shaped like a crescent moon, gleaming silver in the light of distant stars. They had come to demand Earth's surrender. They had sent messages ahead, ordering the surviving humans to present themselves for judgment. They expected to find a broken species, ready to accept its fate as slaves. Instead, they found 200 human warships arranged in a perfect battle formation, their weapons powered and ready. "They're hailing us," Amy Cole reported from her station. "High Commander is requesting communication." "Let him wait," said. He stood at the center of the bridge, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the approaching fleet. Around him, his crew worked in tense silence. The only sounds were the soft hum of equipment and the steady rhythm of nervous breathing. Minutes passed, the fleet drew closer. More hails came in, each one more insistent than the last. Finally nodded, "Open a channel." The flickered and the face of High Commander appeared. He was tall and elegant, his silver skin perfect and unblemished. His black eyes gleamed with cold intelligence. He wore robes of deep purple that marked his high rank in the hegemony. "Humans," said, his voice smooth and condescending, "I see you have been busy during our absence. These ships are impressive for a primitive species. You have exceeded our expectations." Said nothing, continued, his tone becoming more businesslike. "However, this changes nothing. You have seen what we are capable of. You know that resistance is futile. We are here to offer you one final chance to submit peacefully. Surrender your fleet, present your leaders for judgment, and the remaining human population will be spared. You will serve the hegemony, but you will live." Still said nothing. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. "I advise you to consider this offer carefully. We destroyed your civilization once. We can do so again. Your fleet, impressive as it may be, cannot possibly stand against the full might of the hegemony. This is your only chance for survival." Finally spoke, "Do you remember the first day of the slaughter?" Blinked, clearly not expecting this response. "I remember a necessary disciplinary action against a primitive species that needed to learn its place." "I remember it too," said. "I remember the sky turning red with fire. I remember the screams of people dying in the streets. I remember the smell of burning flesh and the sound of children crying for their parents." His voice was calm, almost conversational, but there was something underneath it that made everyone on both bridges go very still. "I remember finding my neighborhood reduced to ashes. I remember searching through the rubble for hours, looking for my wife and daughters. I remember finding nothing but a hair clip that belonged to my 5-year-old girl." He held up the butterfly clip so could see it. "This is all I have left of my family. This small piece of plastic is the only thing that survived your disciplinary action." His expression hardened. "Your personal losses are regrettable but irrelevant. The needs of the hegemony outweigh the concerns of individual primitives. Now, do you accept our terms or not?" Lowered the clip and put it back in his pocket. When he looked up again, his eyes were like ice. "Let me tell you what we found when we excavated the ruins of our cities," he said. "We found mass graves filled with millions of bodies. We found hospitals where your soldiers killed patients in their beds. We found schools where teachers died trying to protect their students. We found nurseries where bobbies were murdered in their cribs." He took a step closer to the screen. "We found a center in New York. 147 children, none older than 5 years. Your soldiers did not use weapons on them. They used their hands. They took their time. They made sure every single child suffered before they died." The bridge of the Defiance was utterly silent. Some of the crew had tears running down their faces. Others wore expressions of cold fury that matched their admirals. "You call us primitives," continued. "You say we need to learn our place, but I think you are the ones who need to learn something. You need to learn that there are some things you should never do. You need to learn that some crimes can never be forgiven. You need to learn that when you try to exterminate a species, you had better succeed completely. Because if even one of us survives, we will come for you." He turned to his tactical officer, Christopher Lee, a young man who had lost his entire family in the bombing of Boston. "Status of weapons." "All needles armed and ready, Admiral. Targets are locked." Looked back at, the commander's expression had changed. For the first time, there was something other than arrogance in his eyes. It might have been uncertainty. It might have been fear. "You said this is our only chance for survival," said. "You're wrong. We don't want survival anymore. We already survived. What we want now is something else entirely." "And what is that?" asked, his voice not quite as steady as before. Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a man who had lost everything and had nothing left to fear. "Revenge." He turned away from the screen. "Close the channel. All ships launch all weapons. No survivors." The next few seconds were chaos. 200 human ships opened fire simultaneously. Thousands of needles streaked across the void, each one a tiny messenger of death traveling at nearly the speed of light. The fleet had no time to react. Their shields flickered on, but the needles had been designed specifically to exploit the gap in those shields. The first ship exploded in a ball of fire, then another, then another. High Commander's flagship was hit by over 100 needles. It did not explode so much as disintegrate, breaking apart into millions of pieces that scattered across space like glittering dust. In less than 30 seconds, the entire fleet was gone. 50 warships that could have conquered a solar system had been reduced to nothing but debris. On the bridge of the Defiance, there was no cheering, no celebration. The crew simply stared at the in silence, watching the remains of their enemies drift through the void. Stood at the center of it all, his face expressionless. He had imagined this moment so many times over the past 3 years. He had dreamed of seeing ships burn, of watching the aliens who had killed his family die in fire and fury. But now that it was happening, he felt nothing. No satisfaction, no joy, just a cold emptiness where his heart used to be. It was not enough. It would never be enough. Not until every who had participated in the slaughter was dead. Not until their civilization was reduced to the same ashes they had made of Earth's cities. Not until the galaxy understood that humanity was no longer prey. "Status report," he said quietly. Daniel checked his console. "All vessels destroyed, no survivors detected, our fleet took no casualties." Nodded. "Begin recovery operations. I want every piece of that debris collected and analyzed. There may be useful intelligence." "Yes, sir." Amy Coles spoke up from her station. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from space. Multiple channels. They're demanding to know what happened to their fleet." "Let them wonder," said, "for now." He walked to the viewport and stared out at the debris field. Somewhere in that cloud of destruction were the remains of the architect of the slaughter. The alien had died quickly, probably without even understanding what was happening. It was more mercy than he deserved. But mercy was not something dealt in anymore. Mercy was a luxury for people who had not seen their children murdered. Mercy was for civilizations that had not been pushed to the brink of extinction. Mercy was dead, killed along with 8 billion human beings on the day that decided to teach humanity its place. Lisa Grant approached him, standing at his side. "What now?" she asked. Watched the debris drift slowly past the viewport. In the distance, he could see Earth, a blue and green sphere by the marks of destruction. His home, his graveyard. "Now we send a message," he said. "We send the everything, every recording we have of the slaughter, every image of every mass grave, every testimony from every survivor. We show them exactly what they did to us." And then turned to look at her. His eyes were hard and cold and utterly merciless. "And then we tell them we're coming. We tell them that we will not stop until every soldier who participated in the slaughter is dead. We tell them that we will liberate every world they have conquered, free every slave they have taken. We tell them that this is not a war. This is an extinction." Lisa nodded slowly. She had lost her own family in the slaughter, her husband, her parents, her 3 sisters. She understood the hunger that drove because she felt it too. "The galaxy won't understand," she said. "They'll see us as the aggressors now. They'll say we've become just as bad as the..." Shook his head. "The galaxy didn't lift a finger when the murdered 8 billion of us. They watched it happen and did nothing. They don't get to judge us now." He turned back to the viewport. "Besides, we're not doing this for the galaxy. We're not doing this for justice or morality or any noble cause. We're doing this because they killed our families and we want them to suffer for it. It's that simple." The next few days were spent preparing the fleet for the long journey ahead. Engineers worked around the clock to repair minor damage and upgrade systems. Crews drilled constantly, running simulations of every possible battle scenario. Supplies were loaded and organized. Everything was made ready for war. And across the fleet, the survivors of Earth found themselves changed by what had happened. For 3 years, they had lived with fear and grief and the constant weight of loss. They had worked and fought and struggled just to survive, never knowing if their efforts would mean anything. They had hoped, but they had also doubted. Now the doubt was gone. They had faced the enemy and won. They had proven that they could be beaten, and in that proof they had found something they thought they had lost forever. Purpose. Every survivor knew what they were fighting for now. Not just survival, not just resistance. They were fighting for vengeance, for justice, for the memory of 8 billion people who had been murdered simply for being human. And they would not stop until the debt was paid in full. On the third day after the battle, ordered the fleet to assemble for a final briefing. Every ship, every crew member gathered to hear their admiral speak. He stood on the bridge of the Defiance, his image transmitted to every vessel in the fleet. Behind him, the stars stretched out in an infinite canvas of light. 3 years ago, he began, they came to Earth. They came with smiles and promises of friendship. They told us we would join a great galactic community. They told us we had a bright future among the stars. He paused, letting the memory settle over his audience. They lied. They came to enslave us. When we did not submit fast enough, they decided to teach us a lesson. They killed 8 billion of us. They burned our cities and poisoned our lands. They hunted us like animals and laughed while they did it. His voice hardened. They thought they had broken us. They thought the survivors would crawl and beg for mercy. They thought humanity was finished. He looked directly into the camera. They were wronged. A murmur of agreement rippled through the fleet. We did not break. We did not surrender. We took our grief and our rage and our pain and we turned them into weapons. We built this fleet from nothing. We learned their technology and improved it. We found their weaknesses and exploited them. And 3 days ago, we destroyed the most powerful fleet they had ever sent against a single species. He raised his fist. This is just the beginning. They control hundreds of worlds. They have enslaved dozens of species. They believe they are the masters of the galaxy and that no one can stand against them. His voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. We are going to prove them wrong. We are going to free every slave and liberate every world. We are going to hunt down every who participated in the slaughter and make them answer for what they did. We are going to tear down their empire piece by piece until there is nothing left but memories and warnings. He pointed toward the stars. Out there are the beings who murdered our families. Out there are the ones who killed our children and laughed about it. Out there is the enemy we have sworn to destroy. He lowered his hand. I will not lie to you. This will not be easy. They are powerful and numerous. They have allies and resources we can barely imagine. Many of us will die before this war is over. He looked at the faces of his crew, at the images of the other crews displayed on screens around the bridge. But we will win. We will win because we have something that we'll never understand. We have something that cannot be broken or destroyed or taken away. He touched the pocket where the butterfly clip rested. We have the memory of everyone we lost. We have the love we still carry for our families and friends who were taken from us. We have the promise we made to them to honor their memory and avenge their deaths. His voice rose. They wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. They succeeded. Our place is not as slaves or servants or prey. Our place is as the reckoning. Our place is as the storm that cleanses the corruption from the stars. Our place is as the vengeance of 8 billion innocent souls who cry out for justice. He straightened his shoulders. Today we leave Earth behind. We leave our ruined cities and our mass graves and our monuments to the dead. But we do not leave our purpose. We carry it with us into the darkness between stars. We carry it to every world they have touched. We carry it until the day when the last soldier draws their last breath and the galaxy is finally free of their evil. He looked once more at the camera, his eyes burning with cold fire. This is Admiral Drake of the Earth Fleet Defiance. To all who can hear this message, friend and enemy alike, know this: humanity is coming. We are not here to negotiate. We are not here to make peace. We are here to deliver a message written in fire and blood. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was quiet and terrible. No more mercy, not ever again. The fleet began to move. 200 ships, bristling with weapons and filled with survivors who had nothing left to lose, accelerated toward the edge of the solar system. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among millions. On the bridge of the Defiance stood alone at the viewport. He watched his fade into the distance and felt something stir in his chest. Not hope, not exactly, but something close to it. They had won the first battle. They had proven that they could be beaten. They had taken the first step on a long and bloody road. But the road was clear now. The path forward was simple, if not easy. They would fight until they won or until they were all dead. There was no middle ground, no compromise, no mercy. They had created this reality when they decided to exterminate humanity. They had turned a peaceful species into a weapon of vengeance. They had taken away everything that humans valued about themselves and left only rage and grief and the burning need for retribution. Thought about his daughters, about in her butterfly clip, about in her first steps, about Sandra and her roses and her smile and the life they had planned together. They were gone, nothing could bring them back. No amount of killing or destruction or vengeance could fill the hole they had left in his heart. But he could make sure their deaths meant something. He could make sure that no other species ever suffered what humanity had suffered. He could tear down the empire that had destroyed his world and build something better in its place. Or he could die trying. Either way, he would face his family again someday, and when he did, he would be able to tell them that he had not surrendered. He had not given up. He had fought until his last breath for the memory of everyone he had lost. The stars stretched out before him, cold and infinite and waiting. Somewhere out there, they were just beginning to understand what they had awakened. Somewhere out there, enslaved species were hearing rumors of the humans who had risen from the ashes of genocide. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was about to change forever. Drake, once a history teacher and now an admiral of vengeance, stood at the helm of humanity's fury, and he had only one thought in his mind. This is for you, this is for you, this is for you, Sandra. This is for everyone. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, and the stars became streaks of light that surrounded them like a tunnel of fire. They were leaving everything they knew behind, their home, their world, their past. But they were not leaving their purpose. That would stay with them until the very end. And for the end was coming faster than they could possibly imagine. In the cold darkness between stars, humanity was on the move, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The age of human mercy was over. The age of human vengeance had begun. The end of Part 1.